Okay, there we go. We're live. Let's go play. I think so. Okay, there we go. We're live there. God. I'm going to turn off our camera. Okay. So stop our video. There we go. Make this bigger. Okay. So people on live can hear us right now. Yeah. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah, it's an honor that we have a very, very beloved guest, Ustad Al-Akh Al-Kareem Daniel Haqiqatjou, joining us from the States, and he's going to be talking about a very, very important subject, which is atheism, something that we face as a struggle in the West now. And Daniel, hafidhahullah ta'ala wa baraka fi, is very known for his da'wah online. It's very, very remarkable work. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him for that and reward him. Without further ado, Daniel, تفضل يا أخي الكريم جزاك الله خيرا.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, as-salat was-salatu was-salam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullahu khairan for inviting me to this very beautiful program that you have with Sheikh Lutfi. MashaAllah, I'm sure you all are benefiting from his knowledge and wisdom. May Allah preserve the Sheikh. I'm very glad to share just a few words, brief comments on the subject of atheism. And atheism is something that I've been studying for many years. And it's something that is affecting society. I don't want to over-exaggerate the influence of atheism because I don't think it's actually something that has really risen in terms of total numbers compared to other religions. It's not the majority. The majority are not atheists in society, but we live in a society that is controlled by atheism. We live in a world, actually, that is dominated by an atheistic worldview, an atheistic legal system, an atheistic culture. This is what is dominant, and that's going to slowly but surely increase the number of people that leave religion and actually reject belief in Allah, reject belief in God. But it's a step-by-step process. Right now, what we see in terms of demographics is that there are a lot of what are called nones, meaning people who are not affiliated with an organized religion. These are the kinds of people that say, I'm spiritual, I believe in God, but I don't practice any particular religion. So they're not technically atheists because they believe in God, but they are just separate from any kind of organized religion. This is the category of people that has seen a huge rise in the past 10, 20 years. And it seems like social media has actually increased the numbers of these nones. So that's what the statistics show. And this is showing step by step, because after you lose connection to a religion, you lose connection to any kind of practice or system of belief, then the next step is atheism, complete rejection of God as well. So this is the trend that we're seeing, and it's caused by this atheistic philosophy, atheistic worldview and ideology that dominates the world, and especially the Western world. And the main ideology of atheism is liberalism. Liberalism, materialism is another one, but as far as politics, morality, psychology, the dominant idea, the dominant ideology is liberalism. And the main thing that liberalism does, actually, I mean, this is a whole major topic in and of itself, is what is liberalism? But I often talk about like philosophical liberalism. And what do we mean by philosophical liberalism? So when I say liberal, I don't mean like left wing. I don't mean Justin Trudeau. That's not what I mean by liberalism. By liberalism, I mean this ideology that actually goes back 250, 300 years to the Western Enlightenment period, this historical period known as the Enlightenment, where there was a rejection of organized religion. And they adopted a philosophy of maximizing liberty, maximizing freedom, maximizing equality as the highest values. And basically, the mindset is that these values are above God. These values, these values are above God and revelation, and these are the highest values, and they're the most rational values. And all of society needs to be organized around these beautiful values of freedom and equality above all else. And that's what led to many revolutions that happened, like the French Revolution or the American Revolution, many social movements as well, just the promotion of democracy, the promotion of human rights, and all of this is on the philosophy of liberalism, philosophical liberalism. So this goes beyond like Justin Trudeau or the left wing or the liberals or the Democrats. This is something that all Western politicians, whether they're right wing or left wing, they are liberal in the philosophical sense, meaning they accept the importance of freedom and equality above all else. They just have different ways to approach or achieve this supposed liberty and equality. They have different strategies, but they all worship, or they all bow their heads, kneel to this value of liberty and freedom and equality. And just to be clear, in Islam, we do value certain freedom of choice. We value the principle of equality. Those are things that are values found in Islam as well. But we don't raise those values above everything. We don't say this is the most important thing, and we're going to restructure society. We're going to restructure our family. We're going to restructure our entire religion so that we maximize freedom and equality. No, we keep everything in balance. And that's the beauty of Islam. And this is the extremism of liberalism, that you put liberty and personal choice and your equality. That is the most important thing. Essentially, it's the worship of the nafs. It's the worship of hawa, of desires and whims. That's what liberalism ultimately is. But it increases atheism. It increases a detachment from God. It increases a detachment from organized religion and traditions. Why? It's very simple. The religions, all religions, and even beyond religions, cultures, they all are traditional. They are all based on traditions. For example, in certain cultures, you have a wedding tradition. Like you have to dress like this. You have to wear certain colors. You have to have certain days dedicated to this kind of feast. You eat in this way, these kinds of foods. You're not supposed to see the bride beforehand. You're not supposed to talk to the groom in this way. All of these kinds of traditions that exist in different cultures. And Islam also has traditions and rituals. We have the sunnah. These are things that we practice, and they're traditional because we've taken them from the past. We have inherited them from the past. Obviously, Islam, when we practice Islam, all of the teachings of Islam are coming from the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is tradition. But liberalism says that no, these are chains, these are restrictions. Why, for example, do you have to eat with your right hand and drink with your right hand? Why? You should, if you want, you should be able to eat and drink with your left hand. I think my camera is mirrored, so this is actually my left hand, not my right hand. So this is the liberal mindset. Like if you choose to break the tradition, by all means, tafaddal, go ahead, break the tradition. This is something good, actually. You have to go against the grain, go against the norm. You have to really explore and spread your wings, and don't be chained by these practices in your culture or your religion. You have to have the free choice. Whatever is good for you, whatever you wish to do, you should do it. That is the most important thing. So this is the liberal ideology, the liberal mindset. And it's very clear how this is contrary to every culture, every tradition, every religion is contrary to it. And Islam is it's the most contrary to Islam, actually, because Islam is the religion that is the best preserved religion. Islam, objectively speaking, this is something that Muslims say, but it's objectively true from an academic standpoint, that Islam is the best preserved. How Muslims practice today is the same as they were practicing 1400 years ago. This is a established fact. And so when you have such a strong preserved tradition, then this becomes the biggest problem for liberalism. And this is why Islam is enemy number one for this kind of philosophical liberalism. And we see that throughout history with the colonial invasion of the Muslim world, the imperial invasion of the Muslim world over the past 250 years, in places like Algeria and Egypt and India, Bangladesh and Indonesia and Malaysia, different parts of Africa, we see that. And then in current day, since the mid 20th century, and how these liberal regimes, these liberal Western democratic regimes, crack down on Muslims through, whether it's this so-called war on terror, or whether it's through countering violent extremism policies, or it's other kinds of discrimination and surveillance of Muslims. This is all done by liberalism, because liberalism identifies Muslims as being so resistant to the liberalizing force. The Muslims just won't liberalize. Muslims want to keep practicing the Quran and Sunnah no matter what, and they keep passing down the same traditions, and they keep practicing the same traditions generation after generation after generation. This is a problem. We want to liberalize them like the Christians have liberalized. We want to liberalize them like the Hindus and the Buddhists and the Jews have liberalized. We want them to become a liberal version. And then ultimately, eventually, they're going to become agnostic, and then they're going to be atheist. This is the step-by-step path. You can call it khutuwat shaitan, the steps by shaitan, basically. This is what liberalism encourages. But what I wanted to discuss with you, inshallah, that's just an introduction. But there is this very scary hadith. May Allah protect us, but it is related or is collected in Sahih Muslim, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam what can be translated as, rush to perform good deeds. Rush to perform good deeds before a fitna, before a tribulation test, which will be like the dark part of the night, in which a man will be a believer in the morning and an unbeliever in the evening, or he will be a believer in the evening and he'll be an unbeliever in the morning. He would sell his faith for some goods in this world. So this is a shocking hadith, because it is saying that someone is going to be at night going to be a believer, and then in the morning is a disbeliever, or in the morning he's a believer, and at night, by night, within less than 24 hours, less than 12 hours maybe, he's going to be a disbeliever. So what allows this kind of shift, this sudden change, to go from such a big difference, night and day difference, between a believer and being a believer, a Muslim, a mu'min, and then being a kafir? What could cause that? Because usually when we see people who leave Islam or leave any particular religion, or they become Muslim, right? Even those who become Muslim, it takes time. It takes deliberation. There's a process, whether it's a negative process where someone will leave Islam, or it's a positive process where someone is just reading about Islam, watching certain lectures, reading hadith, reflecting, doing tadabbur, tafakkur, thinking, pondering, reflecting on Islam, and he becomes Muslim. Or the negative, someone has shubuhat, they have some kind of doubts, and then that leads them down a path to disbelief. It takes weeks, months, maybe even years. That's what we typically see, just in sociological terms. But this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that this is a sudden disbelief that comes. And, there's different interpretations from the scholars and the ulama that they give of what does the Prophet ﷺ mean when he's saying that there's a tribulation that's a dark tribulation, like a part of the night. What does that exactly mean? There are different interpretations of that, and I'm not going to interpret it for you. But I think what is significant is this suddenness, like everything is unmoored or unanchored. People are just blowing, with the wind. The wind blows one direction and they go in that direction. The wind blows in another direction, they go in another direction. There's no anchor to hold us firm, to hold us steady. And this is a big problem, because people become very affected by their surroundings. People become very affected by the powers that want to manipulate them, that want to socially engineer them, that want to push them in the wrong path. This becomes a big problem if you don't have your principles, you're anchored. Iman is something that is like a fortress for you. And a fortress has high walls and has strong walls that can resist the tide, can resist the storm, that you won't be moved so easily. That's what we need. And that's how do we achieve that? Well, that becomes a question of Islamic practice. That becomes a question of spirituality. That becomes a question of ibadah. Worshipping Allah. How consistent are you worshiping Allah in order to strengthen your iman and strengthen your yaqeen, your certainty in Allah and the akhirah and all of this. So that's the way that I imagine when I'm visualizing the kind of fitna that is created in our day and age. It's because people have become unmoored. They have become unanchored. And part of what has caused that is this ideology of liberalism, this idea of liberalism, and you have to be free and pursue your choices no matter what. Just give in to your desires, give in to your hawa, and do what makes you feel good. This makes you more susceptible to atheism because you're not grounded, you're not anchored. You just want to do what makes you feel good. You want to just pursue what is going to bring you that momentary pleasure, that momentary satisfaction, that dunyawi type of happiness, pleasure that Allah warns us about in the Quran, and the Prophet ﷺ warns us about. Not to trade, not to sell our soul, not to sell our deen for some worldly gain, for some momentary pleasure. So becoming unmoored, unanchored. And the thing is that Allah has given us, Allah has not just allowed us to, be unanchored. Allah has actually created all of us, all human beings, Muslim, non-Muslim, believer, disbeliever, on the fitra. And this is such a huge advantage, the fitra. And I'll explain and define what the fitra is for those who are not aware. But the fitra is like the fundamental state, primordial state and orientation of human beings towards recognizing Allah and submitting to Him. That is what the fitra is. And Allah says in the Quran, mentions the fitra in Surah Al-Rum, فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. So Allah is saying, direct your face, wajhaka, or direct yourself toward the religion, the deen, Islam, the monotheistic deen. Adhere to the fitra of Allah upon which He has created all people. No change should there be in the creation of Allah. That is the correct religion, but most people do not know. So this is the fitra, and the Prophet ﷺ also has said in a well-known hadith that everyone is born upon the fitra as a Muslim, and then it's the influence of parents that makes someone a Jew or a Christian or any other religion. That is the advantage that every human being has, that we have been created as believers. We have been created as believers in God, and knowing that Allah has created us and that we have to worship Allah because He is above us, He is our master, He is our Lord, He is our creator, and He owns us. All of these things are the fitra that is within every single human being that inclines him or her to Islam. And actually, when you read about the concept of fitra, and many ulama have spoken about this, but one of the greatest ulama, alim, who has written about this topic is Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah. And it's very interesting how Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, writes about this topic of the fitra, because he actually says that it's not just human beings that have been created on the fitra. Actually, jinn have been created on the fitra, angels have been created on the fitra. The entire creation of Allah is created on the fitra. The fitra is not specific to human beings. The fitra is basically the blueprint or the fundamental essence of the creation that is pointing to Allah, that is pointing to the creator. So this is actually what Shaykh al-Islam says about the fitra in his commentaries and his different works on the topic. But this is something that is not only we read about it in the Quran, in the Sunnah, we read about it from our great ulama of our history, scholars like Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. This is also something that is corroborated by the modern empirical sciences. The modern psychological sciences have also affirmed this fact that human beings naturally develop certain kinds of theological beliefs, certain kinds of theological intuitions, and this is something natural that humans naturally have. And they base this conclusion that it's natural on different types of studies. So they do childhood developmental studies, they do cross-cultural surveys, they do neuroimaging of the brain, and based on all of this data, empirical data, they come to the conclusion that belief in God is actually natural. It's something natural. It's something found universally amongst human beings. It's something as natural to human beings as having, two hands and 2 feet, and having 2 lips and a tongue and 2 ears and 2 eyes and a nose. It's as natural as that. And it's not just belief in God as creator. There's more. There are actually more beliefs, natural beliefs, that are found universally. And they call this natural theology. Natural theology. And there are 4 main beliefs of this natural theology. And I'll describe them to you. Number 1, there is an intuition about God, about there being a creator, and about a being who is not, material like, the material world, and is not a bodily, person like a human being, that this God exists. So a God with specific attributes, a creator. This is something that is a universal intuition. Second, there's the intuition about this soul, the human soul, actually, that there is an immortal soul, that there is life after death, and the soul actually continues to exist after death. This is something universal. It's not, beyond just even the, Islam or Christianity or Judaism, even in the other religions that might not have any kind of book, for example, or organized theology, they still have this kind of belief. Third, there is an intuition that all things in the universe were created purposefully by God. And by God, again, they mean a creator, a supremely powerful being. This is a natural belief. The universe has a purpose. The world around us was created with a purpose. And part of this is also the belief that God has created this creation, and God himself is above the creation. He is above so this is actually something found throughout all religions. This is found throughout all religions. It's found throughout all these cultures, that God is above the creation. And he has created the world specifically for the benefit of human beings, for the benefit of humanity. That is also something universal. And then the fourth, there's an intuition that when you do something good, a good deed or a good action, that will bring some benefit. That will have some kind of benefit or reward. And if you do something bad, like committing a sin or committing some kind of oppression or injustice, that will result in some kind of punishment or a harm that will come. And this is universal. Again, you find the idea of karma in Hinduism or different Indic religions, for example. You find the same concept in Native American religions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these are identified as the main tenets of, or the main aqidah, we could say, of this natural theology. Now, obviously, the way that these psychologists explain this and cognitive scientists explain this is that these are like building blocks. And then these building blocks take on different forms and expressions in different religions. And the way that we understand it, and we know it to be the case as Muslims, is that people have corrupted their fitra. Allah has given you this fitra that allows you to recognize Allah, recognize that you are a creature of Allah, that you've been created for a purpose, and that there is an akhirah, and there is judgment. There is a judgment based on if you do good or you do bad. Allah has given all of these intuitions inbuilt, and then people corrupt it. People corrupt it. They change the revelation of Allah. They change their fitra, and this goes against what Allah says in the verse, in the ayah. The religion of Allah is not going to be changed, right? It's not going to be replaced with something else. This is how Allah has created all human beings. So this gives us, a advantage, right? And before I get into the advantage, let me just say how this natural theology completely contradicts atheism, because the atheists claim that people are born as atheists. The natural default state for people is atheism, and to disbelieve in God, to disbelieve in the afterlife. These are just myths. These are things that have been invented by people to manipulate society, to manipulate preachers and shaman and imams have invented these myths in order to control people and scare them, and to scare them so that they will, for their own benefit. This is the common atheistic story that you'll hear from, the new atheists like Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins, or you'll hear even before them from someone like David Hume, different philosophers, atheistic philosophers. This is their explanation for religion. Or Karl Marx, for example, has this kind of explanation for religion. That's just a myth used to manipulate people, that people have just invented. They've invented these ideas. But this research, and the research has really been developed over the past 10 to 20 years. So it's pretty new research on the psychology of religion. This research completely debunks some of the main assumptions of atheism, that humans are naturally atheistic, and then these religions are invented. No, actually, these religious beliefs have a deep origin in natural human development. And that's why they're seen universally. How can you explain the fact that people across the world have the same beliefs, and children across the world have the same beliefs? I'll cite one particular very eye-opening research done by Oxford researcher Olivera Petrovich. And she has written an article. She also has a book on the topic. But basically, she wanted to experiment on children's belief in God. So she was mainly looking at two countries, the UK and Japan. And she wanted to ask children about in the age range of 4 to 6. She wanted to ask them about their beliefs in God. So what she did was she took cards, like flashcards, and these flashcards had pictures on them. So she would show the child a picture of a house, and she would say, "Who made this?" And the child will say, "Oh, this was made by people. The people made a house." She would show a picture of a car. "Oh, people, who made this?" And they'd say, "A car was made by people. People built this car." Then she would show a picture of a mountain. "Who made this mountain?" Or she would show a picture of a tree. "Who made this tree?" And the children would universally say, "This was made by God. God made this." And this is a surprising result, because not every culture has this idea of a creator God. So in Japan, in their Shinto religion, they don't have this idea that there's a powerful God that has created the universe. That's not part of their religion. But the children in that society express this kind of belief in God, and not just any God, but a specifically all-powerful creator God who has made trees and mountains and the sun and the moon and the oceans. That's a belief that the children have. So this is a kind of experiment that shows that this is something universal, that it's not because of the influence of culture, because in Japan and the UK or France or Africa or Canada, these are all different cultures. They're all different histories, and they're independent from each other geographically. So if there's some certain belief or certain behaviors or certain emotions or intuitions that are expressed in the same way across all of these different cultures independently, that is very strong evidence that this is something natural. It's something biologically rooted. It is something universal. So this is how they come to the conclusion about these 4 different tenets of natural theology. So that's one way that these studies basically refute some of the main assumptions of atheism. Another assumption made by atheists is that, well, one way that we can tell that religions are just made up and religions are just myths and that there's no reality to any of these religions is that all of these religions have different ideas of God. All these religions have different, gods that they worship. You have Zeus, you have Shiva, you have Jesus, you have Allah, you have all of these different types of gods. There's thousands of different types of gods. There's Atum, the Egyptian god. There is Moloch, and all of these different kinds of gods across cultures. So this shows that this is just invented. This is just make-believe. In fact, and this is a meme that the atheists will push, they'll say, we can even invent, a god. We'll say the flying spaghetti monster, that's the god that we worship. And they want to mock believers, and they want to mock theists and say, we worship the flying spaghetti monster. This is a mockery that atheists will push online. But this is false. Again, the research disproves this. The research shows that the original understanding of God that's found in all of these societies is the description that I mentioned at the beginning, that there is an all-powerful, all-knowing, good creator who has created the universe and the creation for a purpose. And this God doesn't have like a human body. This God doesn't have a human body. And this is very fascinating, because even if you ask children who are in like a Hindu society or in a Christian society where they believe that God is the Trinity, no child, when you experiment and you ask certain questions, no child will express this kind of view. If you go earlier in age, they won't express the view that God is a blue-eyed, blonde hair man named Jesus. Like that's not their conception of God, or an 8-armed woman, or 8-armed or elephant-headed person, or a bearded man who throws lightning like Zeus. Children don't have that understanding of God. They will give other kinds of descriptions of God. Like children have a hard time expressing, their exactly the concept that they have, but they won't, attribute like a human body, like a human physical body, or any of these other features. So this is again a refutation of atheism. It completely destroys their assumption about the nature of belief and the nature of faith in God. So I don't want to go. I've been speaking for I think almost 45 minutes, so I don't want to drag things on too much, but hopefully I've given you some food for thought. The point though ultimately is that this anchor is within us, the anchor to prevent atheism, and to prevent this kind of weakness in faith, weakness on Islam is within us. These are natural intuitions that we have from birth, that actually originate from prior to our birth, because Allah has created us on the fitra. And there's entire, the Quran describes how Allah has gathered all human beings that He has created, and all of these creatures, and asked them, "Am I not your Lord? Alastu bi rabbikum? Am I not your Lord?" Allah is asking. He asked humanity, asked creation. Qalu bala, and everyone responded, "Of course, yes." And so this is everyone made shahada. This was the witnessing, the testification of all of creation. And the ulama say, the scholars say, that this is the kernel, the core of the fitra, we testified. Allah asked us, and we testified that yes, you are our Lord, our master. So this is something that even goes before our birth. So that's what our anchor is, the fitra, and we have to nurture the fitra. We have to protect the fitra. How do we do that? Well, that's the subject of an entire other lecture, but I mentioned some clues and hints. It goes back to making sure to purify our intentions, practicing the deen. The sunnah basically is the tool, is the model for preserving our iman and for strengthening our iman and protecting us from all kinds of deviation. When we look at history, the main kind of deviance is actually shirk, is actually associating with Allah, because we're worshiping other than Allah, or we're worshiping our own nafs or our own desires. This is the biggest threat, and that's why so many ayat of the Quran are dedicated to shirk. But it's a deviance. It's taking us off the straight path, and atheism is just an extreme version of that, where you completely are rejecting the Creator, you're completely rejecting Allah. So may Allah protect us and preserve us from these kinds of deviance and these kinds of shubuhat, doubts, and may Allah guide us all and protect especially our children and the next generation that's going to be facing even more shubuhat and even more pressure from this liberal, atheistic, dominant force that's controlling the world. May Allah protect us all. Ameen.
Ameen. Jazakallahu khairan, Akh al-Kareem. Barakallahu feek. Is it okay if we just post some questions to you that we have here?
Sure.
Jazakallahu khairan. There's one question that says, how do we battle the problem of evil with atheists who say they don't believe in God because of all the evil in the world? and I've heard it before myself. Sometimes they say, if there's a God, why is there so much murder? Why is there war? Why is there rape? So on and so forth.
Yeah, so the world is a test. The dunya is a test, and Allah guarantees that we will be tested and that we will face all kinds of death and loss of property, loss of life and struggle and hardship. And the ones that Allah loved the most, the Anbiya, the prophets and the messengers, they face the hardest tests and they face the most loss of life. You know, look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who lost both of his parents. He lost his wife. He lost his uncle. He lost his children. Most of his children actually passed away before he did. So this is, and not to mention just all of the struggles as the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So none of us are tested like the prophets, like the Anbiya are tested. But that's not something that should take us out of belief in God. Like, this is something that Allah has promised. And we have to just recognize that we don't have the whole picture. We don't have the full knowledge of what reality is. We are just in the dunya. We have limited faculties. We experience certain things and we say, oh, this is a hardship. This is the worst kind of thing that could happen to me. And then it turns out that in the bigger picture, it wasn't bad at all. It was something that was very good and very beneficial. It was something that actually benefited you in a major way, and you didn't recognize. Like, you prayed, oh, I want to marry such and such person, or oh, why can't I, go to this university or get this job? And Allah doesn't grant you that dua. Allah doesn't give you what you want. But then you realize after the fact that, oh, if I had gotten that, it would have been terrible for me. Or Allah gave me something much, much better. That is the way that the human mind works, is when you have a very limited understanding. You have a very limited, human beings are like children. We just see what is in front of us, and we can't really understand the bigger picture. And Allah is saying to be patient, to have sabr, to persevere despite the challenges, and you will be rewarded for that. And then you will know, when you die and when we go and we are judged and we stand before Allah on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and we're judged for what we did in this life, then we'll know, we'll see the bigger picture then, but it'll be too late to change our decision. So this idea of problem of evil, it doesn't really make sense. The way that you can respond to it, also another way that you can respond to it is that, well, it's in the bigger problem of evil is the atheist understanding that there are criminals and murderers and rapists and all kinds of evildoers who are killing people and stealing from them, committing all kinds of crimes, and they're living really luxurious, comfortable lives. And according to the atheistic understanding, these people will never face any consequences for that. They'll just die and they'll become dust. And this is actually what Allah records in the Quran about the disbelievers and the criminals, is that when they die, they'll wish that they were dust. They will wish that if only we could just be dust, because they have to face Allah. They have to face accountability for their crimes. Allah didn't just let them go and turn them into dust when they died. No, Allah resurrects them. Allah resurrects them, and then He will judge them. That is what makes more sense. That's what's more moral, is the Islamic conception, not the atheist conception that a person can commit all kinds of evil, all kinds of crime, and then he enjoys life to the max, and then he just becomes dust. There's no accountability. That's the more serious moral problem. But they don't have a response to that.
No, Jazakallah khairan. Does anybody else have a question? Yes,
yeah, there's this group of people that
sorry, Daniel, can you hear the brother?
Barely.
Yeah, there's this group of people that believe they believe in justice. They don't really believe in religion. So, are we actually capable of being just or doing good without actually a guidance?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't understand.
Yeah, like some people, like they may not actually claim that, like they are atheists, but they don't believe in religion. They just believe in goodness.
Yeah.
Like, so are we actually capable of being good without actual guidance, like Islam or religion per se?
Did you understand, Daniel?
Yeah, so this is the nons that I referred to.
Exactly, yeah. No.
Yeah, so that's you answered the question, right? So how do you determine what is right and wrong? How are you going to judge that? It's just going to be based on your desires and your whims and your limited rationality as a human being. And then how do you organize society? How do you live your life? What kind of rules should there be for marriage? What kind of rules should there be for divorce? What kind of rules should there be for raising children? What kind of rules should there be about gender? You know, is there actually two genders, or are there infinite genders, or everything is a fluid, mess? What is the reality? Where can we get guidance on all of these questions? How do we run a government? How do we run a economy? How do we make sure, what should people eat? What should they not eat? How should people wash themselves? How should people cleanse themselves? How should people, bury the dead, or should we cremate, or should we, what should we do to handle death? All of these questions, and humans there is no guidance except the guidance of Allah. There is no guidance except the guidance of Allah. And when you look at the options, okay, well, there are all these religions. Why should we become Muslim? Why should we follow the guidance of the Quran and the Sunnah as found in Islam? This is a question that people can ask. Well, the answer is very simple. Islam is the only religion that has been preserved. All of these other religions that you're practicing, they have been distorted. They modify and reform themselves, especially in the current day period. They've all liberalized and secularized, and they have changed their teachings. And this is a clear historical record that even the academics, even non-Muslim academics have pointed and recognized the historical development and the intellectual development of these religions. They've changed, and they have molded themselves to be as compliant and as aligned as possible with the dominant political order, which is a liberal secular order. This is because they haven't been firm. They haven't remained consistent and constant in the face of pressure. They have just changed and adapted. That is a proof that they are false. That is proof that they are false. Whereas Islam has remained consistent, has remained completely unchanged. And the proof is there. It's very clear that the texts have been preserved. The Quran has been preserved. The manuscript of the Quran has been dated. This is objective fact, and they will admit it themselves. These academics will admit it themselves. They hate to admit it, but they have to admit it because that's what the empirical data shows. And like the kind of standards that they use for Islam are so high that they don't use for any other religion, and Islam still meets their standards of preservation. So this shows that Islam is the true religion, and the religion that is from the Creator, that every human being, because of their fitra, knows.
Jazakallahu khairan. There's another question, Brother Sant. Is there an obvious tie between liberalism and atheism historically? Weren't most of the authors of first wave liberalism basically deists?
Yeah, many of them were deists. But they became more and more atheistic over time as they left Christianity, and they went further and further away from Christianity. They went further and further away from the Bible. But originally they were deists. Deists, let me define that. Deist means people who believe in an abstract concept of God, an abstract concept of God that doesn't care about his creation. Basically, the way to describe the deist God is like a watchmaker or a clockmaker. That the watchmaker God of deism has just made the universe like a clock, and then just set the clock, and the clock just runs independently like a mechanism by itself. And this deist God does not intervene. He doesn't send prophets. He doesn't send revelation. He doesn't, he's not involved. He doesn't hear your prayers. He's something just very separate and apart. This is what deism is. And so that's the first step away from organized religion, because when these deists had left Christianity, they said, we don't care about these Christian traditions, these Christian practices. We don't care about the Bible. That's the first step. And then afterwards, the coming generations of liberals were hardcore atheists.
And then inshallah we'll take, maybe I don't want to take too much of your time, Akhi. We'll take one more question inshallah, and that is, how do you respond to people who overvalue science as a source of guidance? They think science is the be all and end all.
The best antidote to this kind of understanding is to read the history of science and to recognize how many changes science has gone through. And these are referred to in the history of science as scientific revolutions or paradigm shifts. And the one book that I highly, highly recommend to every Muslim, actually, the book that, a book written by a non-Muslim, is Thomas Kuhn's The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. This is such an important work. Why? Because it shows how science is not this march of progress, that it just continues to advance step by step by step and learns more and more and more and more, like this kind of constant progress. This is a myth that does not actually is not justified by the actual history of science. The actual history of science is revolutions. You have one paradigm, one idea of the way of the world, the way that the world works. Like, for example, Newtonian dynamics or Newtonian mechanics. Isaac Newton and his laws of motion. Every, action has an equal and opposite reaction, for example. These are the laws of motion or the laws of gravity. This is its own paradigm. And then that paradigm is destroyed because that paradigm can't solve certain problems. It's found to be inadequate in certain ways. And then there's a new theory. There's a new theory of dynamics, a new theory of motion. There is special relativity from Albert Einstein. There's general relativity, which is a theory of gravity, also from Albert Einstein. And the new theory, it creates a scientific revolution that completely displaces the old theory. And now physicists, they know, even if they might use Newtonian mechanics because it's easier, mathematically, they don't believe that the universe is actually Newtonian. They believe that the universe is Einsteinian, according to Einstein's model of motion and space and time. And then they'll say, oh, there's a new theory. There's a new revolution that's coming. It's the revolution of quantum mechanics and a quantum theory of the universe. And actually the space and time are determined by the quantum field theory, blah, 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 blah. So it's just revolution after revolution after revolution. Each new revolution completely displaces the old theory, and there's a new model of reality. There's a new model for understanding the empirical world. So this, if you recognize this, then it shows that, okay, well then why are these mistakes being made? If one theory is displacing the previous theory, that means the old theory is false. The old theory is wrong, but people, the scientific consensus was that the previous theory is the truth, is the haqq with a capital T, right? With a capital Ha. That's what they believe. But they turned out to be wrong, dead wrong. And the theory was replaced with a scientific revolution. And so this, when you realize that, okay, well then what's to say that the scientists today and the scientific consensus today, maybe tomorrow it's going to be replaced. Maybe tomorrow there's going to be a scientific revolution that will say that, oh, all of this stuff. Oh, you were talking about the proton and the neutron and the electron. You were talking about nuclear fission and nuclear fusion and whatever. Oh, those are stories of old. Those are past myths that we now know are completely debunked, and there's a completely new model. Who's to say that that is not going to be the case in the future? There is nothing to guarantee that that won't be the case in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years. So having this understanding of history and the development of science in the West since Isaac Newton's time, 300 years ago, this is the best antidote to displacing science from this pedestal that it has been placed on by Western society as the end-all, be-all of rationality and truth and understanding the world. Muslims, we can very easily, we just throw it off of that pedestal, and we recognize the reality because we educate ourselves about the history of these subjects. So read Thomas Kuhn, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions is a very good book, very interesting. You'll benefit from it, inshallah. And that's what I recommend.
Barakallah feek. And for all of our viewers in our audience right now, Daniel has, Jazakallahu khairan, lots of online content, programs, and courses. If you can just let us know, Daniel, how we can access your content and programs and courses, please.
Yeah, so I have, I run a website. It's like a news and opinion website called muslimskeptic.com. Muslim skeptic, skeptic is spelled with a K. So that's the best place to find writing on these subjects. We talk about modernism and liberalism and so forth in context of world politics and current events. And then there's a YouTube channel that we have also called Muslim Skeptic. If you search for it, you can find it on YouTube. And we have lots of videos on all of these topics, debates where I debate atheists, I debate liberals. So hours of content online for free that you can watch or you can read. If you want like more organized courses and an actual curriculum to follow, so that you can get a more academic and technical, technical treatment of liberalism and atheism and modernism and feminism, LGBT. I also have an institute. It's an online institute called Alasna Institute, coming from Alasna al Haq. Are we not on the truth? Are we not on the truth? This is a rhetorical question coming from Omar radiallahu anhu, to have pride in Islam. This is the truth. And we question and we challenge whoever comes and tells us otherwise. So this institute is just 100% online. You can enroll in classes, you can take online courses. They're pre-recorded. You can match it with your schedule, whatever it may be, and you can benefit from that, inshallah.
Jazakallahu khairan wa barakallahu feek. We really appreciate all of your time and your effort, Ya Kareem. We know that you're busy and we took lots of your time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and reward you.
My pleasure. Wa iyyakum. Allah bless your program, and we'll see you soon, inshallah.
Ameen, inshallah. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.